I think the big two problems are, one, to get something out of AI that's personal, you have to put it in, you have to give AI the material. And usually that involves a questionnaire or something like that. And then you're asking people that might have difficulty writing to now answer a questionnaire with enough information and flourish to give AI what it needs to do.
Hey Chillas, I'm not sure where you're at in your wedding planning process, but something that you have to do is those vows. And so whether you are just about to get started on it or you're in the middle of writer's block, we got you covered today with Brian Franklin, who is the co-founder of Vows and Speeches. Brian, welcome to Bridechilla.
So great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So on your website, I saw that you and your wife, Nicole, co-founded Vows and Speeches in 2021 because you found speeches to be kind of boring. Is that true?
I think that's probably endemic in most weddings. I think anybody that's been to a wedding has suffered through somebody going on for too long, and just, the energy of the room gets dragged out of it. And sometimes it goes on longer than anyone could imagine. I've talked to a lot of different wedding planners across the country, and some of the stories are horrific, just truly horrific. But I think it more than disaster avoidance here. I think it's more a question of, like, is it entertaining? Is this keeping up with the quality of the rest of the event? We spend so much time and money on the optics, but you've got these periods of time, whether it's the ceremony itself or the vows within the ceremony or the speeches, which are pretty large chunks of time if you consider where they might fit in, let's say, a 4-hour wedding.
Absolutely.
And they're traditionally without a whole lot of guidance, and they could be better for the most part. I mean, some of them are great, and some people are great at this, but some people aren't. And then the wedding just kind of dips a little bit in its quality. And I think that was something that we thought about and realized that this is an opportunity to apply our skill sets and help make sure that doesn't happen.
Now, your background was in political consulting, I believe, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Was Nicole's as well, your wife?
Yeah, she was a more of a media buyer than a traditional political consultant. I'm more the writer and the debate prep kind of person. And a lot of those same skills obviously translate. I mean, if you can make a 3 or 4 minute political speech entertaining and interesting to people, I think you can do a lot with love. Right?
Absolutely. Well, speaking of love, before we get into the vows and stuff, love a good proposal story. So how did you propose to Nicole?
Oh boy, that was an absolute complete mess.
Really?
It was an absolute mess. Yes.
Tell us.
Well, the short version of the story, and there is no short version, but the short version of the story is that this is our second marriage, and we had a blended family, and my son lived in Florida, with me and his mom, and my wife and I had a long distance relationship for 9 years, where I flew across country. For the most part, it was me. I flew across country every week, basically one direction or another. But the kids only were able to get together in summers and winter breaks and whatnot. And so we happened to plan for the kids to be together at a big family wedding, which I know is a faux pas, but there was no choice, really. You never knew what was going to happen in summers because, the kids' dads sometimes would take them on vacation and go. So this was my chance. They were all going to be together. I glued these wooden shells, I glued these shells onto these wooden letters that said, Nicole, would you marry me? And the idea was that my son was and the kids were going to run to the beach as soon as we got to the hotel up at Half Moon Bay. And they were going to, find something on the beach. And then I would bring Nicole over to see it. And then she would see the letters and I'd propose. That was the plan. Unfortunately, I didn't count on the fact that Nicole was extremely hangry. Right. Really, like, we had just gotten to the hotel, wanted to sit, have a drink, eat, talk to my parents. So when the kids called and said, hey, come on over, she's like, yeah, just tell them to come back. Not right now. Right. And And also the path it was hot out, and the path to the beach was a lot further than I had actually thought it was. So I'm like I'm literally dragging her to the beach. Like I'm like, no, we got to. Why can't you? No, but at this point she's just like upset. Like, why are we doing this? And then finally it worked out, but it was a mess.
That's hilarious, but sweet at the end.
Yeah.
I love the shell idea. That's really clever to have the kids with the shells. And
yeah, I burned my hands gluing those, like with a hot glue gun, put that thing on for weeks.
But you just gave a big tip that we should all remember. Do not do any big decisions or make any big decisions if you're hangry or your partner is hangry.
Yeah, predict.
It does not end well.
Yeah. If there's a lot of logistics involved, you might want to make sure everybody gets fed before you do it.
And that includes on your wedding day, because people forget to snack and eat because you're nervous and you're busy.
Right.
Get those snacks in. All right. So let's get to the vows, Brian. What is the first step that we should really make when it comes to writing our vows? Because that's an overwhelming thing in and of itself. Like all of wedding planning is, right? But the vows this is personal.
If there are people that just started their wedding planning process, I really encourage you to do this early in your process. And whether that's working with someone like me in our company or just doing it on your own, by doing it that early, first of all, you're getting something out of the way that you can do well in advance of when you're fighting over, tablecloth colors or something, or the guest list. But you give yourself more time to sit on it, more time to edit it, more time to practice it. It's really important that you practice it out loud. And there's things that you need to do that are very hard to do in the last few days before your wedding. But I think outside of that piece of it, you want to have an agreement with your spouse on how long it should be. So, we typically say 1 to 2 minutes. You want to have balance in not just in the timing, but also just understand what you want to say and like what the ground rules are. I mean, I see these things as a declaration of love. The actual vows are a small part of that, but it's mostly a declaration of love. You don't want to say anything that will potentially embarrass your partner. You don't want to use things that are very cliched or over. Try not to bring up things that.
Hold on, the cliche.
Yeah.
Let's jump ahead on that for a second, because there are things that are considered overused, cliche, that we probably should really look at avoiding. What would those words or phrases be?
Well, I think anything that you feel has been, like things like, I love you to the moon and stars. I mean, stuff like, just like these very generic, non-specific things. I mean, one of the things that we do, and I think it makes for really great vows, is we really focus on making specific things the big thing, right? Like it's specific parts of your life and your marriage and the way that you develop together. And the more specific you can get with it, the more personalized it feels, and it becomes fresh for everybody, not just the audience, but for you. It's not something you've heard anybody say before, right? So if the two of you, at your first date, you went to barbecue, and you had all, midway through the date, like, how did we do barbecue? I'm a mess now, right? That's something that's you. And that's something that should be part of your story, whether it's in the ceremony or in the vows. So I think that's saying I love you in a way that is yours and reflects your marriage or your relationship, I should say. That's going to be much more special than something that's ethereal. I love you to the end of days or something like that.
So where is that line of being personal, keeping it personal, but not oversharing or saying something that might embarrass your partner, even though you might think it's sweet, but like it's.
Yeah, I mean, this goes for vows. It goes for speeches as well. I think first of all, it's probably not the place to talk about how passionate of a lover
you mean grandma doesn't want to know that?
Well, she may want to know that. You might have a very dirty grandma, but that's not, I think if you don't know that, I think it's just more of a question of, is this stuff that you would say in front of someone's boss or in front of someone's work friends? Is it something that is that personal that they might feel exposed in a way than they shouldn't, right? And that's different than saying something intimate. And I think intimacy and specificity is not embarrassing. It's just something that uh, gets you closer to the reality of their love. And so you just don't want to do things that cross the line where you're not 100% sure that this is the right audience for that. There's a difference in the humor that you can do in a small room with friends or with your family in a small room versus in a big room. It's just different.
So you want to add your personality and like the personality of you as a couple, but what if one is an introvert and one's an extrovert? One's more romantic, one's more playful or the dry wit. Like how do you find that balance? Is it okay to have your vows be more like your personality?
Oh, absolutely. And our process. So what we do is we interview people for an hour, at least. Sometimes, the other day I did one. It was an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And in that process, we're getting into things like not just how did you meet, but like what did you see in their profile? What did you see? What was something in their profile that got you, or in your text exchange when you moved in together? What was something that you learned about them, right? That you learned they had that you weren't, that you didn't realize they had? Or when you first went into their house, were you surprised by anything they had, right? And those kinds of things can lead to a lot of humor. It can lead to a lot of new stories. I'm doing one right now where she found out that he had a collection of Jordans, and by a collection of Jordans, I mean like hundreds and hundreds
Oh
of
my
Jordans that took out that are across the entirety of the house, and that's okay. It's like, okay, that's something I got to deal with, right? And they had to negotiate. Well, we're going to need this room because we're going to have a kid,
God.
And he's like, oh, okay, I guess. And so, that's part of your life. And so that's part of your life together. So that's something that's fun that you could talk about, and it can still reflect a love for each other, because it's a love that transcends somebody's crazy collection of Jordans, or a collection of something else, right? So I think the style of how you approach it can be very, very different, but you're going to talk about what you love in the other person, no matter what.
I love that. And you recommend a good 1 to 2 minutes is like the sweet spot for the vows.
I think it usually is. I mean, it's usually like 2 minutes. I think it's hard to get to 1 minute and still say all the things you want to say, but I would say 2 minutes is pretty good. Three feels a little bit long sometimes.
Is that like the Oscar music starts to need to be played?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how when you're listening to somebody speak on the Oscars, at some point you're just like, okay, all right, it's time to get off the stage, right? And some of that has to do with how entertaining they are, but also it's just there's only so much of that feeling that people can take at once. And that's why it's also really important to have a balance of humor and sentimentality, because you want to give the listener a bit of a ride. You want it to be a bit of there should be some breaks to the emotion of it. And allow people to breathe a little bit before you hit them with another really mushy sentimental thing.
What are some of your key elements that you recommend as a way of kind of breaking this down for us?
So the elements that are most important involve specificity, which I've talked about a little bit. I think you have to have humor. You have to have you have to feel that you are representing the honesty within your relationship. You want it to be brief, of course. And then, I think I mentioned earlier, you want them to have equal length. We can run into issues where you have someone that speaks for 2 minutes and then someone gets up there and does 25 seconds. right? And they're
Yeah.
like, it just feels, even though their love is equal, it doesn't look that way when they get up there and they don't look prepared.
So should you agree on how long, and you both have to match that?
I think within a few, 15 seconds or so. Yeah, I think it shouldn't be, and likewise, one person shouldn't be 2 minutes and the other one 5. Right? It just feels weird, and it's just not necessary because you can find that middle ground somewhere in there. So I think they should be roughly equal. I think they need to be original. You really got to look at these things and avoid. We talked about like avoiding some of those cliches. It's like, don't say I vow to love you for all eternity. Say, something that's more specific to them. Or specific to you. I vow to love you, even when the Eagles lose or whatever. Like, and it's something that gives a little bit of character to it. That's yours.
Oh, I love that. Do you think you should, and this is not applicable to everybody, but like if there are children involved in the relationship or a certain family member that might have influence in the relationship, should you find a way to incorporate that in the vows or honor?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've had instances where it kind of depends on where the relationship with those children stands and how sensitive that is as a topic for certain people. But I think because you don't want to overstep and be like, call somebody a dad when they're not really the dad anymore, at all. And, but I think honoring their role in being a co-parent, if they are honoring, or at least someone that has developed a wonderful relationship with their child, that kind of thing is great. I love when I hear vows where someone has married someone with a child and they talk about how much that child means to them and how wonderful it is to be a part of their life as well. I mean, that's what you're signing on to is it's not just a marriage to your spouse, it's a marriage to the family. Right. So I think recognizing that as long as you're not doing any damage with what you're saying, then yeah.
Because you want a contentious situation for sure.
Right. The first rule for all of this is do no harm, right? You want to elevate the wedding, but you don't want to do any harm along the way.
So we talk a lot on here about different trends, whether it's decor and vibe or dresses, but do you see trends in vows? Is that a thing?
I think the trend is to be hyper personal. I think non-traditional is the thing here. People have seen so many weddings, whether they've seen them in person or they've seen them on TV, that I think we're just getting tired of seeing the same stuff. I talked to a wedding planner once that saw 2 people deliver the same speech. Like they got it off the internet as a template, right? And I think people can just sense that. It's the same reason we can all tell when we see AI writing.
Well,
right?
That's what I was going to ask you next. It's the hot take.
That,
yeah.
But I think I'm seeing more and more weddings that are just going off script a little bit in a good way. And I think vows are the same way. It's having fun with it. It's letting it reflect your personality. It's saying the things that maybe you just haven't heard people say before. And I want to get back to something you asked earlier because I don't feel like I addressed it enough. There are a lot of clients that we have that are introverts that are afraid of public speaking. They're worried about doing this publicly. And I'm a huge advocate for doing this publicly and not privately. It bothers me when I hear couples just saying it in private or doing it on the side. This is the best part of the wedding. It's our chance as an audience to see you talk about your love for someone. That's why we're here. And it is the most, when it's done correctly, it is the most emotionally powerful moment in the wedding. When you see someone like start to choke up a little bit and about how much they love this person in front of them. And so the fact that people feel some fear about what they're about this moment is natural, right? Most people feel some level of public speaking fear. The trick here is if you like what you've written and you've practiced it enough, perhaps with someone that's a delivery coach, because that's part of what we do. If you've got both of those elements, you are going to be able to do this and you're going to be able to feel great about doing it. And so introverts, people that are not quite as expressive, that's where the interview process comes in, because that's when we're going to get to the info. But then when you work on the copy until they're happy, and you work with them, and once they have something that they're happy with, really truly happy with, then it's easier to get up and deliver it. But it's hard to be that confident unless you've worked with somebody or you've trusted a friend or a colleague or somebody to look at this and go, this is great, or I would do this or this and this. And then you make those edits and now it's great. And so getting up there and being able to do that, if you're in the audience and if you're not sure about doing this, find somebody, whether it's us or somebody else, find somebody to help you, because you will make your wedding better by getting up and doing it.
I'm glad you brought practicing, because it's something going into this I had never considered. And I don't know why, but that's something I never would have thought about, was the actual practice portion.
Oh, it's so important.
I know I'm personally so consumed with the writing portion of it and the delivery of it, but you do need to practice in between it to get that delivery, right?
Of course.
And that delivery, the cadence, your flow, your just how you articulate all of it, how you bring that emotion. And granted, you're going to be so caught in emotion that you may not do exactly as practice, but you're going to be better for it.
For sure. Look, there's a certain way of reading that people have when they are reading off a page, particularly when they're reading for the first time. But as you practice it, you don't need to memorize it. In fact, I advise people not to try and memorize it. What you want to do is get fluent in it. And by practicing this enough times, you become familiar with the phrasing enough to where you start saying it in almost as if it's conversational, like in a phrase by phrase or sentence by sentence way, instead of a word by word way, that you don't have that choppy wordy
scripted
thing.
And
right. But it also gives you enough memorization to where you can look up and look into the eyes of your partner or look into the eyes of the couple if you're giving a speech. And this is the same thing for ceremony officiants too. You want to be able to look up off the page, and it also allows you to concentrate on those things like tone, right? So sometimes you want to raise your tone, and when you're saying something happy versus, get a little bit softer and talk about something that's really, really heartfelt to you. And having that dynamics and tone is something you could only really concentrate on if you've gotten enough practice underneath you. I'm also someone that stumbles over their words a lot. I tend to stammer. I do a whole bunch of things. I don't know. I got hit in the head too many times. But at any rate, I can edit that stuff out by practicing it. But I have to have it word by word enough in my head or on paper to where I can then just do it without doing those little things that I do if I'm speaking extemporaneously. And so that's a way for you to edit that stuff out just by working on it enough. Also, if you're a big crier, as I am, being able to get through it without crying or without crying a lot, because we actually want you to cry a little bit.
We want you to cry.
We want you to cry, but not to the point where you're like tears are running down your face and your makeup's
snot,
right? Just not ugly crying, right? But if you're someone that cries a bit, after you've read this 15 times, the sting of the words will still be there. You're going to, especially when you're actually doing it in front of your partner, but it won't be quite as potent as it was the first time you read it. And so you can insulate yourself a little bit on by doing that over and over again.
So you just mentioned officiant. It's the perfect segue for this next portion, because before we get to the speeches, we got to finish up the ceremony, right? We got to get the rest of this meat. And that is the officiant. When our pre-talk, I mentioned that my boyfriend Dave just got ordained online to be a dudist priest.
Yes.
And here you are as well.
I am. Yeah. Yeah.
So for those not familiar with what that is,
fan.
Yes. Can you just kind of briefly tell people what this means?
The dudist, being a dudist reverend?
Priest. Yeah.
Well, our forefathers, part of the whole a First Amendment freedom of speech thing is that they don't really get to tell you what a religion is, right? So you can have a ridiculous religion, and it can be qualified as a religion, at least under the law, and so therefore you can be ordained and become a reverend. So for me, it was. I don't know, 8 years or 9 years ago, someone asked me to officiate one of their weddings, and I knew this was a thing, so I got ordained, and I was able to do it legally, and that's, they had same thing with it's basically the same thing as the Universal Church of Life. There's a Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, you name it, they have it all, and but yeah, you can do that, but the problem I think happens because we ask friends or family members that are charismatic, or perhaps they have some public speaking experience, but they're not necessarily familiar with what it takes to write a ceremony or an 8 to 10 minute narrative of your relationship, and have all of the flow that it would normally have, and make sure it has all the prerequisites of a wedding. So the things that are necessary to make it legal, even. And so people aren't really familiar. And what do? They go online, they go to Google, they get a template, right? And then they do some level of customization to it, but it's still a template, and it still has a lot of the same basic language that everybody has heard before. Even those people that are capable of this sometimes just run out of time, and they panic and they go get the template. So that's where, this is a part of the business that I did not think would be huge for us. I really honestly threw it in because a couple of planners said you should. And it's become a big part of our business because a lot of people are now, or I think more people than not, are asking friends and family members to do this, and they don't know how to do this. And this is one way to make it easier for them. And when we do it, we not only interview the couple individually, we interview the ceremony officiant that knows them. And so we're getting their voice, their wording, their perspective on the relationship and on marriage in general. And then we incorporate all of that and then work with the officiant to do it.
I love that. So what is the first step? If you ask a family member or friend, or if you yourself have been asked, what is the first step then?
Well, if they're working with us, the first step would be we'd set up the interviews with the couple. I like to do the couple first, and then I talk to the officiant. And then it's just writing this thing out in a way that represents the couple's wishes. Of course, they might have readings or other requirements. Some of them want to incorporate religion, some of them don't. They might want to have, their aunt do some sort of thing, some candle ceremony or a fireball unity shot or whatever it might be. So we get the tone of what the couple wants. We get the, whatever their wishes are, and we just amalgamate the whole thing and work with the ceremony officiant to get them prepped so that they're up there and they're holding the mic properly, and they have worked on the delivery themselves, because some of them are very nervous. This is a big moment. It's not like giving a sales presentation. Yeah.
So how can they incorporate their personality and try to honor the couple and honor their wishes, but bring their own flair to it,
Yeah. I think, they were brought in for a reason. They all have their own flair. I think it's really important to not make it about them too much. You want to recognize why you're there, but not make this all about you. It's about them. So I think the important part here is to tell the couple's story in a way that shows the development of the relationship, talks about why they love each other, and then let the couple, if they're doing their own vows, let them focus less on the linear aspects of the story and more about those parts of their own relationship that they love and the attributes that they love about each other. So one of the things that happens when I'm doing both the ceremony and the vows is I've got to carve room for the vows. I've got to make sure that the ceremony doesn't step over the vows or step on the vows, and vice versa, or that they're not repeating the same stuff. And if they are talking about something similar, then it's coming from different angles. There's the factual versus the more subjective perspectives of each other. It's that kind of thing.
So, what is an issue that you see most commonly with officiants, especially first timers?
Well, like I said, they tend to go generic, and that's the first big problem. I think they forget that this is supposed to be fun. So it becomes too serious. It doesn't follow the energy of the couple, right? So it's just too, they're trying to be dramatic with it. And you should be. You want it to have some drama, in a good way. Like you want it to have gravitas, right? But they're trying to keep it serious and focused. And in doing that, they lose the enjoyment factor that you're supposed to have at these things, which is, it's a celebration. This is a joyous party, and we want people to have that energy. And, they get up there and they're like, ladies and gentlemen, it becomes a little too formal. Yeah.
Are there certain things you think that they should make sure they're doing? Like, I feel like some of the best ones I've seen, they open it up with just like some simple housekeeping rules as if it is a theater production. Like, hey,
yeah,
the
turn
ceremony
your phones off.
has professionals, and don't have your ringer on. And
yeah. I mean, I sometimes
key things.
Yeah, listen, I expect you all to laugh at my jokes, like things like that, right?
If you plan on objecting, just leave now.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No interruptions. Nobody, no heckling, that kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, everybody's different, but I think you definitely want to tell them to keep their phones away if that's what the couple wants. I mean, some people want those phone pictures, but really, if you've hired a photographer, you want to keep the lines of sight pure, and you want to see the faces and the reactions in the crowd and that kind of thing.
Yeah. If you're listening in, I am sure you all know how stressful planning a wedding can be. A million things are on that checklist. BriteCo Wedding Insurance can help take some of the stress away. Finally, an insurance option that is fast, simple, and totally comprehensive. Get all the liability protection your venue requires. Host liquor, property damage, even pet protection for 5 days of events in one simple policy, one transparent price. Plus, they offer cancellation coverage to fit any wedding budget and give you peace of mind for all those deposits you've put down. So, if you want to relax and enjoy your wedding day, check out BriteCo today. Visit brite.co/Bridechilla to get a free personalized quote. That's brite.co/Bridechilla to get a free personalized quote. So something you started to mention, which was a hot take, and this goes for vows, officiants, readings, speeches, is AI, the power of AI. So what is your take on people utilizing things like ChatGPT to write their vows, speeches, etc.?
Well, personally, I don't like it. I mean, I think that the problem with AI is I think the big two problems are, one, to get something out of AI that's personal, you have to put it in, you have to give AI the material. And usually that involves a questionnaire or something like that. And then you're asking people that might have difficulty writing to now answer a questionnaire with enough information and flourish to give AI what it needs to do it even halfway respectively. So that's difficult. I think AI can't do what we do because most of what we do comes out of the interview process. The writing is simple if I'm interviewing somebody and I get the good stuff. And to get the good stuff, you have to ask follow-up questions. You have to have a sense of going, wait, tell me more about that. I want to know more about that part of it. And you dive and you dig until you find what you're looking for in terms of the attributes of that couple that make it truly fun or special or romantic. And some of those things you really have to search for. And some of them are very obvious, but AI doesn't do that yet, at least. And so that's part of it. AI can't tell you what not to say, which is a big part of what we do. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
very true.
Giving some advice as to, okay, I don't think we should really talk about how you don't like this part of them or whatever it might be. And
they probably will tell you save from the moon and back.
Yeah. And look, I mean, by definition, AI takes all of the things that it has available to it and then makes a decision as to what's the best thing that everybody would like. And that's not you. So I do think that there are people and I guess price points out there where if you can't afford to work with someone like us, then maybe that's better than what you would have done without AI. I don't know, but I definitely think there are people in your life that you could go to that could help you out, that are good writers or very funny people. AI is not really great at writing jokes. It just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, it serves its purpose.
You know,
Like it could be great to help you with work or maybe some school projects or whatever. But
yeah, I use it all the time for other things.
Yeah,
yeah.
But you also notice that there's patterns of common AI language, I guess. And at a certain point, is it going to be like, oh, this sounds very ChatGPT-ish?
It doesn't. The thing that happens when I work with a couple is that I'll give something to somebody and sometimes we have to just change a few words here or there to make it sound like them, or that's a phrase I don't use. Can we come up with something else? Yeah, sure. No problem. I wouldn't put it this way. I'd put, you have that conversation with them and then you edit it to suit them and their voice. That's hard to do with AI because sometimes there's just a word in there that or phrasing in there that you're just like, what? That is nothing like me. But then you don't necessarily know what to do to fix it. And then you'll spend 3 hours instructing AI to try and do it differently. And it doesn't ever really work that well. So for me, I've had difficulty. Now it's getting better every day. It can't interview you the way that we can. And I think that's something that it's funny because we specifically are marketing like we don't use AI and people are like, thank God.
Yeah.
But I use it all the time for business and for other types of things and research and it's certainly helpful in coming and brainstorming and that kind of thing.
What's your advice then for incorporating like inclusive language, honoring cultural and religious traditions, whether it be your vows or in the ceremony itself with the officiant?
As a couple, I think you just need to decide what you want to say, right? How do you want this to be presented? And if that means saying friends and family instead of ladies and gentlemen, right? For example, or including something about what love means, that is by definition inclusive. That's up to you, right? This is your wedding. And I think the key, again, do no harm. So if you're writing something, just be careful and think about who's in the audience or who could be in the audience of various sensitivities. It's you can always become you can make accidents and say something that you didn't know would be offensive, but what's going to work for people, and who's in your audience. You're the one inviting them. But if you want traditions, I think you just have to be very clear with your ceremony officiant what you want to cover. Make sure that they know the touch points that have to be addressed. And what I do, I don't like to give the ceremony script to the couple beforehand because I like for them to have genuine reactions to the narrative, right? Because again, we're going to do things like, they might both think they're the better driver and we can have some fun with that, right? And I'd like to have them laugh at that line genuinely for the first time in front of the cameras in the video, and love it, right? But there are things that they need to approve. They need to approve the ring language. They need to approve the I do language itself. They need to approve the outline that says, okay, there's going to be his narrative, then, grandma's coming up for a reading, then, whatever. And then you go to the next thing. So they understand the structure of it, but I like to have it so that they're hearing some of this for the first time, but that's the fun of it.
What's your take on readings? Do you think it's necessary or just something nice and extra?
No, I think most of the look, generally I don't like them personally. I mean, respect anybody that has a good one that wants to put it in. I understand that's part of it sometimes. But for me, the crucial pieces of the ceremony, it's the narrative, the vows, the personalized vows, and then the requisite stuff, the ring exchange and the actual I do's, which you have to do in most states just because you have to affirm that you're actually saying yes to this.
It's legal. Makes it legal.
Yeah, and then the kiss, and then anything else that you feel like is whether religiously or symbolically necessary to do it. Readings can be fun, like in a humorous way, like if you're pulling a song lyric from something, or you're referencing that that great philosopher Beyonce or whatever, whatever.
I saw that you have done readings with like Beyonce, Taylor Swift, The Boss. You've used song lyrics in your stuff before.
Out. I've referenced the more recently I did one where I talked about that great philosopher Hugh Anthony Craig III, who is also known as Huey Lewis, and and that's the power of love, right? And referencing those 80s songs, but you can have fun with it. But that's where what kind of music do you like? What are you guys into? Right? What's your favorite song? Do you have favorite songs as a couple? Who do you guys jam out to in the car all the time when, in a hysterical way? And that's the stuff that makes it more specific, more you, less generic, and that you can have fun with, or perhaps you just take a really serious quote from and make it, and it's not a humorous thing, but it is a reference. That's not a reading as you would think of one, but it's something that I'd rather see versus, a verse from a book that you read once in college or whatever. And you also have to consider the audience is there. They're in the hot sun, possibly, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're in suits, they're sweating. You don't want this to go too long. Yeah. You don't want it to be too short, but you don't want it to be so long that they just want to go to cocktail hour.
Hangry. Right? They're getting hangry.
Yeah, they're getting hangry.
With pop culture, though, because people incorporate their vows as well, like how do you think pop culture, movies, music plays a role and influence in vows and in our ceremony and in weddings in general?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, we're seeing these things over and over and over again. And, if you watch, was it Married at First Sight or 90 Day Fiancé? If you have a household like mine, where this stuff is constantly on, and you're just watching your brain cells dissolve as you over minute by minute. I got sucked into this stuff in COVID, and you can't get out. So embarrassed, but to say this, but I'm in it. But you see the same stuff over and over again, right? It's the same material, and so I think that plus TikTok is pushing people to do something more original, but it's also reminding people about when it goes badly, like TikTok, you'll see those viral moments that are very bad, very bad. And you'll see some of those things happen. You'll see the good ones too. You'll see the ones there you go, oh. And so I think there's more of a push now for people to have those moments that get them all like choked up and excited and that are them, right? You can't replicate, you can't do the exact same thing, right? No. So you have to do something that's different, that's yours.
You're each uniquely yourself, and as an individual and as a couple, right?
Yeah.
But with the viral stuff, let's move on to speeches, because those tend to go more viral than anything.
Yes.
Especially the bad ones.
Yes.
So I know I brought up on the show before, I had been to a wedding once, and someone was giving a speech, and it was very obvious the way they were giving the speech that they were a little salty, that they were not in the same place in life. Like, mm-hmm. You could just feel it, and you could just tell by what they were saying without saying it, So what are some good rules of thumb to not be that embarrassing person that you're projecting your loneliness or bitterness or bringing up the exes?
Yeah.
Don't bring up the exes.
Let's start with this. For all of the couples out there listening, ask yourself this question. Is there anybody in your wedding party that is either deathly afraid of public speaking, or you're deathly afraid of what they might say publicly, right? Is there, or say or do, is there somebody in your wedding party that has got a tendency to go long? Is it going to be your father or your father-in-law that gets up there and speaks for 20 minutes? Right? Is
Who
it
are
going to be
high risk
right?
people?
Who are the high risk people, right? And identify them and give them guidance, give them professional guidance to sit over them and make sure that what they do is 3 to 4 minutes, right? That does no harm to your wedding, right? That they don't bring up the exes or, or how they heard you guys in a hotel room having
Oh
fun
my
one time,
God.
right? Or anything else, or how you got kicked in the face with a soccer ball and broke a tooth and walked like, what do you like? You would like to think that people know better in these moments, but I have talked to one wedding planner after another, not just wedding planners, videographers, all of them have stories at the highest of levels. They have stories about how this thing goes badly because they did not get the guidance they should have. And so, it really starts with the couple setting the ground rules. The number one thing that people should do, 3 to 4 minutes, make sure that they know that they have to read it out loud and time it as 3 to 4 minutes, because people don't know what 3 to 4 minutes is on a page. It's a
If it's
lot less
good,
than
it
you
flies
think.
by. If it's painful, it's like an hour.
For sure, but just the very number, like the number of words involved, and it could be a little different depending on how fast people speak.
Yeah.
But people come in with 3-4 pages of material. That's not 3 to 4 minutes, folks, right? So I think you have to tell your wedding party 3 to 4 minutes, and that if you get much past that, we are going to play you off Oscar style. We have to, because otherwise the food's going to get cold and we're going to run out of time for dancing at the end of the night. And that's just the way it's going to be, and people have to understand that.
I mean, I've known of planners and DJs that have literally pulled plugs.
Yeah, look, but if it's established that we're going to start the Oscar music and you are going to play off, we have to do that, right? Just understand, Dad, we have to do that, right? I know you're paying for this, but we have a timeline, and you've also paid for the videographer. And maybe they haven't paid for it, but I'm just saying, like, as an example, right? If they have, and they feel some sense of entitlement, it's my microphone, I paid for this microphone. No. Okay. You also paid for the videographer, and you also paid for the dance floor. And so, and you want the food to be warm for your guests.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. I think from a speaking standpoint, if you're the speaker, you have to look at this for what it is. It is a gift to the couple, to honor the couple, both of them, and their relationship. And that doesn't necessarily jive with how you feel about them. Sometimes it does. And I've had plenty of clients that they really didn't like their best friend's fiance or their son's wife. Or, I mean, that's just the honest truth. They don't like them.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
But that's not the time to tell them. Right? Or they probably already know this. And so that, and that would, if they do know that, it makes it all the more special when you get up there and you honor their love, because this is the day of their marriage, right? And so I think you have to really start with the mission. The mission is to make them happy. And the only way to make them happy is to not embarrass them, is to not say something that's inappropriate. It's to stay on time and to honor both of them in the message. It's not just to talk about your daughter or your best friend, it's to talk about their fiance. And so you have to have some balance in it from that perspective. And then and just make sure that you're not using this as your open mic comedy audition, right? It's not the time to focus on your own, how funny you are. It is important to be humorous at some level, to have some level of humor, for the same reason we talked about earlier. You don't want it to be all one tone.
Yeah, you'll be boring.
Right. But you definitely don't want to stretch the limits of that and then just fall flat, and suddenly you're just doing one joke after another that no one's laughing at and has nothing to do with why you're there. So remember why you're there. There is a format here. It's the formats, make them happy and stick to the timeline.
So all fantastic points, but with that, if someone has not chosen who to do the speeches yet,
Yes.
Because you don't have to have everyone do a speech.
No.
What, in your personal opinion, is a good amount of speech goers? Because some people think it's like a parent from each side, the best man and maid of honor, and then if there's siblings,
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you get past 4, you're really challenging the audience.
Should it be those key 4? Should it be a parent from each side?
Look, I'm not a believer in that. I think that there are traditional, you traditionally hear from parents. I think it's nice to hear from parents. I like it.
I do too.
I think it's a nice, assuming you have a nice relationship with your parents, right?
Yeah.
And they're part of your life. So I like that. I think it's worth having. I think it adds to the event. I think it adds to the event when you have somebody that's been close to you, whether it's your best friend or someone that's
another caregiver,
or just it could be your sibling, but somebody that's been there to see the relationship happen at some level. I think that is always wonderful to see. You get into some issues when you get too restrictive in terms of this subject. Sometimes there are step parents, right? Or like you wind up getting into difficulty because there are multiple people that are really, really important in your life and also want to say something. So then that's where I think some creative planning comes into play, spreading it out, perhaps if you have to have 6 and you don't do them all at once, right? And maybe you limit them to 2 minutes instead of 3 to 4 to make sure that it keeps moving. But I think also, like, there's no traditional, in my mind, there shouldn't be a traditional order to it. You put the best speakers last, right? Crescendo it. When I do, there are times where couples hire us to oversee all of the speeches. So let's say I'm doing 4. That gives me an opportunity to not only make sure that they're different and they have some flow with each other, but also to be able to go to the planner or the couple and say, look, this one's great. It's fine. It's going to be good. But this one's going to knock it out of the park. They're going to be incredible, right? And you don't want to put the person that's nervous and is just going to be okay after the person that just knocked it out of the park.
No.
It's not only for them, but also for the audience. Like, you want this thing to move upward, not downward. And so, for that reason, I don't think it matters whether you put the father last, because the father might not be as good as the best man. Put the best man last. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that order doesn't matter. And it's your wedding anyways, so your rules.
Exactly.
But it's great you have that service to where you can help do all the vows and speeches.
Oh, yeah.
And help the flow in general.
I'm doing one right now. We're doing the ceremony, both vows, and all the speeches. And it's great because that whole section of content in the wedding, that 50 minutes of, I think it adds up in total between the ceremony and all the vows. It's like 50 minutes worth of people speaking, right? And we're going to make sure that all of it's good. And so that's the fun part, because you're shaping the wedding in a good way, and you're making it what they want, really, ultimately.
Well, I hate that, we're running out of time already, because I can keep talking all day with you about all of this, and you've been giving us so much wonderful advice. But we are wrapping up here, and so any last advice on writing for your wedding?
Well, I think the biggest piece of advice is, whether you work with us or you work with somebody else, don't feel that this is in any way diminishing the level of personalization. It's not like someone's writing your vows for you. They're helping you find the words that you really want to say. And there's a initial misconception sometimes where people hear what we do and they're like, wait, you write other people's vows? No, we're getting their words and we're helping them edit it back and distill it back into something that's really truly what they want to say. And that, you didn't do your own hair, or you're not doing your own hair. You're not cooking your own food that day. It's, you're getting help, and that's what this is. And so I think, the message that I would put out there to people is, don't be afraid to get help finding the words that you need to find when you're actually up there declaring your love for somebody, right? Do it the best way you can do it. And this is one way to get there. And And I think as more and more people hear about that being available to them, it's clear that people are okay getting help. You don't have to hide it. I have clients that are like, I don't want my husband to find out. Okay, I mean, it's your call, but I wish they didn't feel that way, and I don't think anybody should.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Brian.
Thank you.
Don't be afraid to ask for help, because this is something that is going to be one of the most important moments of your life. It's going to be in front of your loved ones, and it's going to possibly be on video forever for you to look back on.
Yeah, you're hiring the videographer. You want it to be good content.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it's a fun process. It's a fun process. We have a lot of fun. You're talking about your favorite people.
Well, yeah, that's a great point. So like, it should be a fun process. It should be a fun process because you get to like look back and do a deep dive of your relationship and rediscover all these wonderful things about your partner and these moments you shared together that you probably forgot until you were having to think about all the special things about them and what makes you a wonderful couple.
If I can add one more point on this, I'm writing a book slowly, things I've learned about love by interviewing people, interviewing engaged couples and the people that know them. It's all the lessons I've been kind of collecting from all these interviews and whatnot. But one of the things that I've been thinking about and now I'm advocating to everybody is, after you've written the vows that you want and after you've said them, put them on your wall, right? Put them on your wall, put both of them on your wall, put them next to each other. Have them written out, or whether it's you writing it or a calligrapher or however you want to do it. Put them on your wall, because when you're having a bad day, when things are rough in your life, go back and read it. That's what this is about. And these vows are, like I said, they're a declaration of your love. Go back and read what they said about you. Go back and read what you said about them. And I think that'll be helpful.
I am super sentimental and romantic, and I absolutely love this idea. Love it. Thank you for sharing that last nugget, because I think that's a really rad idea.
I appreciate the opportunity.
The days you're having a rough day or you're maybe in a fight, you just go back and relook at those vows and remember why you're in it to win it together. Yeah. Okay, well, on that note, it's time for the fuck it bucket. Ready for some round of hot takes?
Absolutely.
So it's funny, the very first one I have written down, you already mentioned, but I'm going to bring it back up again because I'm intrigued. Private vows pre-ceremony.
Don't like them. Fuck it. So I have to chuck it in the fuck it bucket. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So I'm chucking that one in the fuck it bucket.
But it was a good point you brought up about how, this is your chance to declare your love in front of your family and friends. And also to get them invested in the rest of the day. Right? They will be, they will know why they're there. They will get more excited about the rest of the event because they've heard you declare your love the way you did. Okay, next one. Unplug ceremonies.
Where they don't have the phones and all that. Mm-hmm. I like it. Yeah. You've got a videographer and a photographer. I think it's better to have it be unplugged. But also, we got a lot of cool photos from our family and friends, just getting photos at the wedding amongst themselves. So,
like a semi-unplug.
I say
don't stand in the middle of the aisle blocking the photographer.
Yeah, that for sure. That absolutely. Yeah.
That's one of my biggest peeves.
Yep.
Wedding hashtags.
Chuck it in the fucking bucket.
Destination bachelor, bachelorettes.
Absolutely love them. Keep it.
Receiving lines. Like post-ceremony when the couple waits. Yeah.
Chuck it in the fucking bucket. Yeah.
Favors.
Keep it.
Choreographed dances.
Chuck it in the fucking bucket.
Cake smashing.
Chuck it in the fucking bucket.
Large wedding parties.
Keep it.
Custom cocktails.
Keep it.
Limos.
Keep it.
Holiday weddings.
Hmm. Holiday weddings. I'm going to say chuck it in a fucking bucket. I just think it puts a lot of strain, particularly on people that have blended families, right?
Oh,
Where you have kids, and it's like, okay, well, you're trading off holidays every year or something like that. That could really create a lot of problems. So I think better not to. Although it does like give people more flexibility to travel, I would say it's more problems than it was worth.
yeah. The huge boutonnieres that are starting to trend on men's
I
tuxes.
am I am the wrong person to ask about this. Okay, I'm a remote worker. I put clothes on for Zooms. Okay, so
No big boutonnieres.
well, let's keep it. Why
Okay.
not? Yeah, let's make it fun.
Open seating at receptions.
I
No
like the table
tables.
thing. I like the table thing. Check it. Yeah,
Final question. What is your all-time favorite wedding in a movie or TV show?
I would probably. God. Um, I think perhaps Family Ties, going back to.
Really?
I don't know. It just popped into my head for some reason.
Family Ties.
I don't know.
Wow.
Like I don't even know why that popped into my head. It
I
shows. First of all,
don't
I
know.
guess it shows I'm so old. Right. That's the first
Stop
thing.
it.
Uh, I don't know why that came. He didn't he get married and then that with
I
to
feel like towards
his
the end. I
yeah
feel like
towards the
towards the
very
end of the
end.
run. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm so immersed in the weddings in front of me. I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for being with us today. And how can we get more information on you and Vows and Speeches?
Sure. Vowsandspeeches.com. That's VOWSAND speeches, SPEECHES.com. If you look that up, or go to Instagram, same thing, Vows and Speeches. Send me a message. My phone number's on the website. You can email me. I'd love to work with you guys, and happy to talk with anybody about what you have going on and see if it's a fit.
Thanks, Judas Brian. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Follow us on social media and visit us at thebridechilla.com. Bridechilla is a production of Evergreen Podcasts. Thanks to our producer and audio engineer, Sienna Longfellow, our video editors, Kay Holmberg and Jessy Leigh, and our executive producers, Bridget Coyne and Gerardo Orlando. Of course, a special thanks to our OG Bridechilla, Alicia, and to Megan Ely of OFD Consulting. I'm Leah Haslage. Until next time, Chillas.